So yeah, as promised, guys, we have Paul. He's from England, living in Mexico. I have a bit of a twister there for you. And he's going to come and talk to us about raw diet, raw food. Everybody knows we feed 100% raw diet to our dogs. Swear by it as well. So, and we're constantly sort of trying to get our clients and people involved in raw diet because there's nothing out there like it. There's no kibble out there that's going to compare to the benefits of raw. But we're going to hear it from somebody who has fed their dogs raw all their life, who's actually an enthusiast on this subject, who really enjoys everything about it. So we'll introduce you guys, and here we have Paul live from Mexico. Go. Oh, there he is. Happy days, you're on.
How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for joining us. That must be nice and early over there.
Yeah, 2 a.m, 2:30 a.m. in the morning. Very dark, very hot.
Nice.
Brutal.
Yes, kind of glad it's not me. Okay, so wow, so yes, this is something a bit new. We never had anybody in from that part of the world on the show before. So yeah, thank you very much for taking all this time out, mate, and losing sleep. This is awesome.
Yeah, no problem at all. Happy to spread the word.
Beautiful. So yeah, so tonight we're gonna talk about a raw diet and everything that goes with it. So yeah, mate, I'm gonna let you take this from here and just start off. And we've got some questions here that we've had in from different people. Questions that I've wanted to know as well, of course. So yeah, we'll leave it up to you. Take it away, my friend.
Okay, no problem. So, I mean, I guess the first thing that people often wonder when confronted about raw feeding is exactly what the benefits are. I'd like to start by looking at kibble, or at least the ingredients involved in kibble. It's a little left field, but bear with me. I don't know if everybody can see, but there is a list of ingredients kind of down there. So
it was up now, perfect.
Yeah, there's a little table at the top. Just for the time being, everybody ignore that, okay? It doesn't tell you very much. The more important bit is this big list underneath. So the first four that are there, and ingredients usually are listed by quantity, so the most first. So we've got ground yellow corn, chickpea byproduct, corn gluten meal, and whole wheat flour. So they're all cereals, which is where a lot of allergies are going to come in. What that tells you instantly is that any meat that is contained in this product isn't grass-fed, it's grain-fed. So that's a real indicator that you may find allergies are there. The other thing is that they call it byproduct, so they're so cheap that they can't even use chicken. You know,
using fake chicken, yeah.
And that's really quite an eye opener. But besides that, I mean, dogs aren't supposed to eat cereal. It's not a natural food to them. Just looking at the dentistry, you know, you can see that cornflakes, for example, is really not something they're designed to eat. I know that's a little stretch of the imagination. But I'd just like to run through them. And the first one that I'd like to draw people's attention to, and that's the third line of the ingredients. It's called Animal Digest, if everybody can see that. Now, Animal Digest is, you know, it's quite an odd name. It's very vague. So I'd just like to explain that. Digest, it's produced by hydrogelizing clean animal tissue. And for those that don't know the process involved in that, basically you take the ingredient, the meat, and you extract any oils with high temperature and high pressure. So you're taking all the goodness away from the meat. The remaining fraction of whatever's left of that produce is then heated with catalysts and solvents, and it has vitamins and things added. It's then steam cleaned at high pressure and high temperature again. So what you end up with is a really inert substance. It's the same process that they make margarine with. And obviously everybody in health tells you to avoid trans fats. That's kind of a buzzword for all those fitness freaks. And it's exactly the same process that's involved in that margarine. It gets bleached and turned inert, and then any chemical synthesis, any nutrition is actually pumped back in to the ingredient itself, which allows the producer to have total control over the nutritional content of whatever's there. And I just want to quote the FDA, which obviously is a government-run American organization. So here we go. A digest is an additive that's been treated with heat, enzymes, and acids to produce a concentrated product. So think kind of chicken slurry when they're making hot dogs, for example. And it's intended to be nothing more than a natural flavoring, okay? There's no nutritional value to digest. It's just there to taste a bit like chicken. And I'll touch on this in a minute. Now, it may legally be labelled as chicken flavours regardless of the percentage of chicken that remains in it, so long as the flavouring itself is deemed perceptibly to taste like chicken. So that begs the question, who tastes it and decides that? Because a dog can't tell you it's chicken.
Good question.
You know? So, there's one worry straight away. This digest stuff is just awful. It's just the slop, and you don't even know what part of the animal constitutes that digest, and you can guarantee it's not going to be a tender steak or a loin. It's going to be awful stuff. Reading down the list a little bit more, we see that there are a number of kind of quite complicated sounding ingredients, really, things that you wouldn't really think were food to kind of read them. And on the next line down, actually, we can see in brackets, we've got a list of things: yellow 5, red 40, yellow 6, and blue 2 that you can just make out there at the end. First of all, these are colourings. We all know dogs see in only 2 colours, blue and green. So why they need to put red and yellow colourings in, is a little bit ridiculous. That's probably more to make it look appealing to us when we're pouring it into a bowl. Just to touch on these a little bit, yellow 5, okay, that's called tatrazine. It's E102. They actually did a trial on 80 children in the 1990s about this. They were all diagnosed medically as having hyperactivity. The results of that trial showed that it provoked abnormal behaviour patterns in around 80% of them. So that's 60 kids out of 80. It's quite a lot.
He was one of those children for sure.
He likes to think. I'm completely normal, I swear.
If you're feeding it to a puppy, and you're trying to train the puppy, it's going to make your life a lot harder. And people wonder why they struggle with listening or they struggle with attention spans. And diet underpins everything, The next one is yellow 6, E110. That's actually called sunset yellow. That's the nice name for it. Actually, in clinical trials, it's been found to cause kidney damage and adrenal damage when fed to laboratory rats. It's also been found to be carcinogenic when fed to animals, and yet they're putting it in our dog food. They're putting it in kibble. The third one, red 40, that's E129. It's called Allura Red. Again, it's got quite a nice sounding name, but it does have allergy and intolerance reactions, certainly in people and people who are susceptible to feeling the side effects of things like aspirin and penicillin, anything that's helping to boost their immune system. It also has a devastating effect on asthmatics, more than really aerosols can do. It can really take the breath away, so to speak. Skin sensitivity is another issue that it's been proven to cause. Also, just like sunset yellow, it's been connected with cancer in mice, and it's actually banned for use in food products in Denmark, Belgium, France, Germany, Switzerland, Sweden, Austria, and Norway.
Wow.
So if you live in one of those countries, they substitute it in for another colour, and I think there's about 16 or 18 different E numbers that all serve the same purpose there. The third one, blue 2, that's E132. It's called indigo carmine. It causes skin sensitivity and rashes, which are quite similar to. Do you have stinging nettles? Some people will be familiar.
Yeah, we do.
We chase around with it.
He likes to try and throw it on me and put it in my bed and
Yeah,
stuff.
that reminds me of being a kid. It causes a rash, a rash that's pretty similar to that. Itching, nausea, it raises blood pressure, and in people who suffer from blood pressure relations, it's been known to cause breathing problems. It's one of the colourings, actually, that the Hyperactive Children's Support Group in the UK recommends is eliminated completely from the diet of children. And again, Norway, being the Scandinavian and forward-thinking country they are, have banned that as well. There are also two more, but they're not colourings. You'll see in there that two ingredients are listed as preservatives. One of them is sorbic acid, and one of them is calcium propionate. Sorbic acid, both of those are natural. Both of those are sorbic acid is produced by lemons, but in large quantities, it's been known to devastate intestinal bacteria. It also causes intestinal upset and can cause constipation, and that's in humans. So when you take the biology of a dog, which has a much, much shorter digestive system, it can cause kind of lots of problems when they go into the loo, and at the end of the day, we're the ones that have to deal with that. The only one there that has no proven side effects is E282, calcium propionate. Again, that's produced by your body in its natural digestive processes, but it is suspected to cause headaches, which is the only known side effect, and there's actually clinical studies being done at the moment that are linking it to it. They're not concluded yet, so I can't say that for certain. But you can see already that in that list of ingredients, there's quite a lot of bad stuff. There's quite a lot of stuff that doesn't need to be there. And it gets worse. Because on the packet, they often say that it's complete. It's 100% natural, it's complete, it's all your dog will need. If it's 100% natural and if it's complete, why does it then go on to detail vitamin B12 supplement, vitamin D3 supplement, vitamin E supplement, vitamin A supplement? If these things are supplemented into the food, it doesn't contain them to begin with, does it?
No, well, it doesn't need it if it was a complete diet.
That's exactly it.
And so you can see that actually it is a very processed food. It's just like making your kids eat crisps or pot noodles every day of the week, and then wondering why you can't control them, or they're having trouble sleeping, like that. It's, dogs work exactly the same. They need food just as much as we do. So that kind of, I just wanted to get that out there, because a lot of people feed kibble without even realising what's in it. And not even that, they give the same bowl of kibble every day of the dog's life. And it's the same stuff. And not only must that be pretty boring, it's doing damage.
Yeah.
So, coming on to the benefits of feeding raw, okay? The beauty of raw feeding is that none of that's there. I've always fed prey model raw. So that's constituted of 80% meat, 10% bone, and 10% offal, okay? And what do you see from that in comparison to kibble? Well, you see an improvement in dentistry, in teeth. The teeth become white, they become clean, the breath clears up. You don't have that horrible dog breath that everybody knows. It's become canonical with dogs, really. But that's due to the food that they eat. They can't brush the teeth. And you find that when you're feeding them a natural diet, when they're getting plenty of bones, that the dentistry improves. You find that their eyes become a lot more shinier, a lot more attentive. There is a change. The body changes. You get to see that really nice tuck before the back legs that things like Crufts really are pushing people to achieve. Well, that doesn't come through exercise, that comes through condition. And condition is underpinned by diet. But it goes much further. A lot of people's dogs suffer with allergies, they might have underlying health problems, and the symptoms that are caused by that, or that it produces, they're a lot easier to manage, much like, say, a diabetic eating a ketogenic diet, or an epileptic eating a ketogenic diet. You cut out those carbohydrates, and it means that your blood sugar is a lot easier to manage. There's some of the seizures and some of the other side effects that you feel from the condition. They're a lot easier to manage without insulin. The same works for dogs. It also means that you can source your ingredients a lot more transparently and a lot more ethically. if they're using chicken digest, how are the chickens treated before they go into the dog food? You know, if I'm getting it from a butcher, from an abattoir, even from a local park ranger, I know that that's an actual chicken that was maybe alive this morning that's now going to be food. It's, you know, there's much more chance that you can guarantee it's led a good life before it's become a food item. People moan about the cost. It doesn't cost as much. It really doesn't. You know, if you can afford to feed yourself sausages and meat and steak, you can afford to feed your dog. Sausages and meat and steak things.
Well, it is true, yeah, because we feed our dogs. We use about 700 kilos of food every 14 days, and it is a lot cheaper than it would be if we were feeding kibble. Just want to sort of just backtrack 2 seconds there, just for the people that don't know, because even offal. A lot of people, when they talk about offal, they talk about heart, lungs and things on like that, and they don't necessarily know. So we just sort of explain to them what is offal and what should be fed as offal and what isn't and can be fed as meat or what something else.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's if you go into a butcher for human food, they'll often sell you things like tongue as offal, but actually when you're feeding it to your dog, that counts as meat. It's a little bit confusing at first. Things that are classed as meat are heart, lung, cheek, tongue, trachea, tripe, gizzards, and actual flesh itself. Things that you would class as offal are more organ-based: your liver, your spleen, your kidney, your pancreas, your brain. And just to inject a bit of humour here, testicles, balls. However, it's worth noting the penis itself of the sheep or the horse or the cow, that actually counts as meat. It's just the testicles that would count as offal. So when you're thinking of offal, think of brain and organs. When you're thinking of anything else, it becomes meat. Okay?
Nice.
That's the way that I tell the difference.
Beautiful. So pretty much these organs are organs, or they're just part of the body that are secreting rather than sort of anything else, because like your liver is purifying the body, so they're more of a secreting sort of organ or a secreting part of the body, because pretty much pancreas, liver, testicles are all things that secrete.
Yeah. Through that, I mean, often these organs are self-cleaning in the body. They fulfill really quite critical roles. And so some of the things that they carry within them, things like essential oils, they're simply not things that an animal can manufacture in its own digestive system. It has to come from food when you're talking about the oils in the diet. And these are the items on the menu that are going to provide that. They're things like your omegas, your omega-3s and your omega-6s, your fatty acids. And, you know, they really are quite essential to a diet in a dog or even a cat, to be perfectly honest. Further from what you'll find, because I'm sure we've all met kibble-fed dogs, we've all met wet food dogs, and we've all had to deal with the poo. And you know, there's mountains of it, absolute mountains of it, and it's always sloppy and yellow or really dark.
Stinks.
And it's just a pain to clean up. One of the benefits of raw is that it becomes a lot firmer and it doesn't smell not nearly as much. You literally have to get right down to it. Believe me, I've done it. You have to get right down and have a good sniff, you know. And really, that's the biggest indicator of how good a dog's diet actually is. It's by looking at the poo. You know, if the poo doesn't look right, well, something's not right.
Yeah, same as a human, really.
Yeah.
You find it's much better formed and it's much easier to deal with, and there's actually less of it. So there really are many benefits, not least the reduction in vets visits. So, and that's all just from 3 ingredients, you know, meat, bone and offal. Now that's split 80% meat, 10% bone and 10% offal. And what I always personally try to do with that 10% offal is make 5 of it liver in every meal.
Beautiful. Perfect.
But that's always a good rule of thumb to get, because then you know that they're getting all of those essential fatty acids.
Right. So say that one of our viewers here today had decided, they're watching the show and they decide, okay, I'm going to try and start my dog on a raw diet. what are the basic do's and don'ts for these people that are starting off, and even for people that have been feeding a raw diet and they're not getting exactly what they're expecting, probably because they're doing the wrong thing. Obviously, it's it's a little bit. There's more to it than just throwing a bit of meat down to a dog and walking away from it.
Yeah, there's a lot more than that, really. I mean, what I would say first of all is don't attempt to wean out kibble or wet food. The reason for that being that they digest at different rates. Even yourself, we've all eaten a meal deal from a supermarket, sandwich, crisps, Coke, and when you eat it, you're hungry again 40 minutes later, and that's because the majority of the meal is made up of carbohydrates. Now, much like this kibble ingredients list that we looked at before, the first 4 ingredients there were all grains. They were all cereals, which are carbohydrates. And the issue is that in the gut, they're used rapidly. Your digestion just burns straight through them. With food items that contain more protein and more fat, it takes a lot more time for the body to digest. It's much more sensible about the way that it does it. So don't mix the two. I would never recommend that, purely because they do digest at different rates, and that again can cause a lot of problems. So don't wean out kibbles, don't wean out wet food, just drop it outright and go cold turkey. From there, to obviously start the raw feeding, start on just one protein. Chicken's usually the one that people will choose and recommend because it's very easy to source. It's also nice and cheap. Now, the reason for starting with one protein is that you are introducing and changing the diet. So you're going to change the chemical landscape inside your pet. Okay, just much like if you switch from a kebab diet to a salad diet, there's going to be a period of a couple of days where your body adjusts. So what I would recommend is that you feed just chicken for a week or so, 6 weeks maybe, and monitor the poo. And when the poo becomes nice and firm, you can pick it up without it being all squidgy. Then you know you're at a good point to introduce a second protein. The ideal that you want to be at is with maybe 3 or 4 different proteins being rotated and fed together in different combinations throughout the week, just so that you've got a bit of variety there. Now, a good protein to choose for your second one is green tripe, not the white tripe that you buy in a supermarket. That's no good. We call that bleached because it's been cleaned with chemicals, and what that actually does is flushes out all of the nutrition from the tripe itself. Green tripe hasn't been treated. It's still got bits of grass and stuff on it, and it stinks. You know you've got it, believe me.
Certainly does.
But it's full of good stuff, and more importantly, probiotics. Just like you see all adverts on TV that want you to drink Yakult or Yoplait or whatever, it's got good bacteria in it, Well, so does green tripe, and that's kind of the dog version. It's like a natural kefir that you don't have to make. So it's a good one to choose as a second protein because it just helps to reinforce that new chemical landscape created. Once you've got to the point where you're feeding 3 or 4 proteins, again, you add one every week, every 2 weeks from that point. You can start to add things like organs and offal because they're a bit richer. So you never want to start out with them because they will produce quite horrendous poos if you just jump straight into them. Make sure your dog can handle it first and build them up to it, The other good thing about chicken is that that's a really good one to start introducing bone into the diet because you can feed wings, you can feed thighs, just totally raw with the bone in and just give it to your dog. I wouldn't just throw it in a bowl and leave it though. I'd actually hold it while the dog ate it for the first few times because some dogs have a tendency to gulp. They don't chew it right and they just try and swallow the full thing because they're pretty excited. You find what will happen is if you do it right, they chew it 4 or 5 times, break up the bone inside the wing or the thigh, and then swallow the whole thing whole anyway. But the bone's been broken into manageable pieces, you see, so it's not going to do any damage on the way down. In terms of do's and don'ts for new starters, don't rush it. And if you find you're having problems or your dog's getting an explosive butt, start removing proteins one by one until things firm up, because the beauty of a raw diet is that you have control. So if you do find that you've got an adverse reaction to something, you can simply start subtracting proteins one by one until the problem goes away, and then you've found your culprit and you simply don't feed it anymore. There is probably one final thing that should be mentioned there, which is fish. I know that cats are the ones that you would normally associate with fish, but actually oily fishes, sardines, sprats, pilchards, they're really, really good because they contain omega-3. And there isn't really anywhere else besides fish to get that. If you can't source fresh fish, teaspoon of cod liver oil.
Yeah, we've used cod liver oil. We also use sardines. We give that. Got Erin, one of our viewers, her dog is here, and she said that I'm not sure if she's eating green tripe now, but she's tried to feed it to her dog a few times and she won't eat it. She's been eating everything that we've been giving her. I think it could be as well that she's around other dogs and she doesn't want them to take her food, so she's gulping down everything, and like things like liver and pancreas stuff, they don't even hit the ground. She smashes them before the bowl hits the ground. So I think it should be okay.
With my dogs, they've always been crate trained. So whenever it's meal time, they go to the crate, and they've all got a separate place to be, and then they're fed one by one in the crate. And that way they know they're in their own space and nobody's going to bother them. I think with meal times, dogs can get competitive. I wouldn't call it jealousy, but they want food. What a concept. I think often it's just a case of keeping them calm, and if you need to separate them at feeding and do it in separate rooms, that will make a difference. I think often when you find that a dog won't eat a food item as well, it's not because they don't like it, it's often a texture issue. So you can try maybe chopping it up and feeding it in little chunks. They might not like chewing such a big kind of mash of tripe, or even freezing it. That's feeding frozen tripe isn't going to harm them whatsoever, and it's actually going to be a bit of a game for them because it's quite a hard substance to chew and to get into. It provides a bit of a challenge for them. If you're ever in that situation, I just experiment with feeding the same food in different ways. If your dog won't try it and keeps rejecting it, you've just got to be creative, and you can get through to them usually.
Okay, we just had a bit of a sound problem here. One of our viewers lost it, but we said that we're recording it. We're going to upload it tomorrow on the Facebook. She said it's back now. Does Paul have a book? You've written a book on dieting, mate.
No, I don't run a blog. I've been told I should run a blog, but it's not something that I've ever really pursued with any conviction, and I've never published any kind of work or anything like that. My history is very much that I've been involved with raw feeding since I was knee high, since as long as I can remember. I was quite lucky in that I grew up in a rural part of the UK in the Lake District, where we were allowed to go hunting for rabbits, and we owned free land, and my family have always fed raw food. It's I've never really known any other way, so no. No, but I could probably write one, although not whether or not it'd be given any credence, I don't know.
So we just had a question from one of our viewers. She just said she thought chicken bones were always a big no-no to give to dogs.
No, cooked chicken bones, definitely. I would never, just cooked bones, period. Don't feed them. If they've been cooked, avoid. But no, there's no problem with chicken bones, provided that you're feeding them kind of in the meat. I wouldn't strip the meat from the bone, and I wouldn't feed anything too small like a wishbone. But wings and legs, certainly you've got no problem with that whatsoever. None at all.
Alright, so there was just another question here. A lot of trainers in Australia seem to, like a lot of the dogs that come here, a lot of people say that they've been to other trainers and the trainers have told them not to feed a raw diet because it actually increases the dog's prey drive. Do you want to shed a bit of light on that?
Yeah, There's no scientific findings behind that whatsoever. Just touching back on that ingredients list, all I can ask you to do is take my word that when I'm interested in something and when I'm researching it, I really do my research. I really do find out everything that I possibly can about it. There's no basis to that whatsoever. And the way that I would there's two parallels that I can draw. Okay. Because it's a stupid assertion, to be honest with you. Fetching a ball, okay? A lot of people play fetch with the dog. They throw a ball about 30 miles an hour and they encourage the dog to go flat out chasing it, get it in its mouth, attack it, and bring it back and drop it at the feet, right? But nobody's ever said that fetch makes a dog violent. That's just ludicrous. The second one is maybe a bit left field, but there was a singer a musician called Frank Zappa, and he was once asked about music making people violent, because it's a similar analogy. And his reply was that there are more love songs written than there are anything else. Songs do something, it would be love each other, and evidently that isn't the case, is it? So, no. If anything, I think I would argue that the sugars and the grains in processed foods could have that effect. They could increase the hyperactivity in dogs, and they could really send it on quite a mad half hour, if you will. The issue is that independent study is badly needed into the effects of processed food, and at the moment, all of the study that's done there is ultimately funded by companies like Purina, Pedigree, Nestle, and Mars. There simply isn't enough transparency around the way dogs react to processed foods. And in any case, raw-fed dogs can live happily alongside cats, rabbits, chickens, hamsters, without seeing any given food. It's there's no basis to that whatsoever. It's codswallop.
All right, so we just had another question in the stream from Ellie asking, how do you know how much quantity to feed?
Okay, so you base that off the weight of your dog. As a rule, you're looking. It depends on the age of your dog. I'm not good at maths, so just bear with me while I pull my calculator up.
I know the feeling, mate.
So you're basing it off the weight of your dog, and you're usually looking to be feeding between, I think it's 2 and 3% of your dog's weight. Now, it's not something that I hold to be a direct science. I've often found that dogs are quite capable of self-regulating, provided they've got a well-ingrained routine around the feeding. The question there also would be, how do you know how much kibble to feed your dog? Nobody seems to bother about amounts with kibble. They just fill the bowl and there you go, off you go. But usually you're looking between kind of 2 and 3% dog. If you want it to gain weight, I'd up it. If you want it to lose weight, I'd give it more exercise.
Yeah, well that's it's good too. Always with the kibble, they just go by what's on the back of the packet. But that's just the manufacturers. What if they're asking for more food to sell more? Like it's always, it's
that's the issue.
Them.
That's precisely the issue. I tend to do it by eye. I feed twice a day. Obviously, my dog's back in the UK at the moment, which is pretty heart-wrenching, I'll be honest with you. But I do it by eye. I feed twice a day, and he gets a full bowl twice a day, which it's around kind of, I don't know, I've never weighed it. But I would imagine it's around kind of 3 to 4% of his body weight daily. It's just about checking the condition of your dog. If he looks or if she looks underweight, and you can see the ribs and the shape's not quite right, just up the amount. It's not there's no hard science really behind it. A lot of people get hung up on this. Personally, I use fast days. I fast my dog once a week, and that's just to kind of make sure that he isn't fussy about his food, and also to make sure that if I do feed an incorrect amount, that at least there's a day there where his body's kind of got a rest. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. If you're feeding a bowl of kibble every day, I'd just feed a bowl of raw food every day. As long as you've got your percentages right, that's probably more important than the amount.
Yeah. Look, we all feed the raw diet here. We do weigh how much we give to all the dogs, and for a dog that's about, like Baloo for example, he's probably about 45, 46 kilos. He gets 1.5 kilos of food, and the 7th day, every dog that is above the 12 months goes for fasting. We do fast the dog, so I definitely agree with what Paul's just said there about fasting the dog, which is really, really good. None of the dogs look unhealthy. They're all very healthy. People that come here look at the dogs, look at the condition of the dogs that they're in, and it's fasting a dog as long as they're over 12 months. I've never done it with puppies or anything like that because they're just running around, running amok anyway, so they'll burn off that extra fat. But other than that, that fasting is very, very good. Lots of water that day. We don't even exercise them on the day. Just let them be completely just a day off, pretty much like we would.
Yeah, completely.
So obviously there's going to be a little bit of sort of a battle, if you will, sometimes with vets, of course, because a lot of people, when they come here, just before actually.
Oh God.
It's a real thing, apparently.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't even know it existed until it got here. But yeah, we ask people why they're not feeding a raw diet, and they say because their vet says that kibble is more balanced. It's given 100% raw diet, it's not going to sort of give everything the dog needs. But obviously, listening to what you've said earlier and how to feed the dogs, of course they're going to get all their vitamins, and it is a complete diet. But how would these people go about approaching their vet and trying to sort of make them understand, or how to work with them, or should they work against them? What's the go there? Like, should they just tell the vet to piss off? How does that work?
I could talk about this one all day, to be honest with you. First of all, I would say be truthful with the vet. Don't, if you go to a doctor, if the doctor asks you, do you drink excessively, do you smoke cannabis, if you ever lie to them, you're a bit of an idiot, because they're going to supply you with drugs. And if you're not honest about your lifestyle and some of the things that you're putting into your body, obviously they could give you totally the wrong drug for the situation and cause more problems than you had when you went. Visiting a vet, I often think, is quite a misunderstood process. It can be a relatively painless visit, but you've got to go prepared, because it's not really a vet's mandate to know about nutrition. Just the same way you wouldn't expect your GP to be able to tell you about dieting and nutrition. A GP will always refer you to a dietitian. That's what they'll do. And vets really should work the same way. In that respect, the veterinarian industry is light years behind where it really needs to be. There is this kind of thinking that vets are mercenaries who love taking money from kibble companies and processed food promoters. Maybe that's true in some cases, and probably a majority of cases, but you can't really blame them, because it's quite an expensive business to run. And to be honest with you, if somebody wanted to give me money to push a certain product, I'd probably do it as well in that position. You can be prepared to visit a vet if you've ever visited a personal trainer in the past. That's the best way of describing it that I can give you. A personal trainer will make you write a food diary. He'll make you detail, or she'll make you detail, exactly what you eat, the times at which you eat it, how that food made you feel, and how you react, what you drunk. If you were taking supplements, they'd make you name it by brand and the amount that you took. And you can do the same thing for your dog before you take it to a vet. You can write a list of the proteins and the organs that you're feeding, and then show that to the vet. You can take photographs of the food in the bowl, so that the vet can see the variety that the dog's actually seeing. And as I mentioned earlier, there's always going to be an improvement in the coat, in the eyes, in the teeth, in the breath, and believe me, the vet will notice. They always do. The more in is that they know about drugs and the way that drugs kind of affect the dog's system, and that they're able to perform surgery if needed. That's much more important. So yeah, what I would do is I would literally just treat it like homework. That's the best way I can see it. Record how your dog reacts every time you feed them. Do they get energy? Do they go lethargic? Do they make breath smell? Do they get flatulent? Do they eat it quickly? Do they eat it slowly? In between feeds, do they get hunger pukes? If you were feeding processed junk and you switch over to raw, and you've got pictures of your dog before you were feeding it raw, when it was still receiving kibble and wet food, take a before and after picture with you. I'll just take a before picture because you're taking your dog with you anyway. And then the vet will be able to see the difference that the diet you're feeding has made. I mentioned poo earlier as being the golden rule, yeah? Take a photograph of poo and take it with you to the vet. The vet won't mind seeing a picture of dog poo. Believe me, they've seen it plenty of times. They clean it up probably every day. And also that can go into the food diary. Does your dog struggle to poo? Does it go looking for grass to eat? I mean, they're all valid dietary observations, and they're all going to help the vet. And just to go a bit further on that, what I would touch on is that if you're one of these people that likes to supplement a dog's intake, you like to give them, diatomaceous earth, you like to worm them just as a precaution. It's bizarre, but people do it. If they're chemically synthesized supplements, list the brand names that you're giving to your dog, so the vet also has a copy of that. The more information that you give to a vet, the more information they can give you back. That's just straightforward logic. Vets aren't magic, and they don't have all of the answers. So often they do need our help, and the more you give them, the more you'll get. It's your choice as to how much effort you put into that, but it's worth putting the effort in. As soon as a vet sees the difference that a raw diet can make, they'll often jump and tell you that you're doing the right thing. Provided your dog's in good health, they can't say anything. They might offer to sell you kibble. Oh, well, you should feed him my Eukanuba or whatever. But again, just show them the pictures and ask them why.
What is being held? So got another interest.
No.
Good answer. Good answer.
No. To think about that, right? You could buy a lottery ticket tomorrow, first lottery ticket you've ever bought in your life, and you could end up being a millionaire. But the chances of that happening, they're really remote. Like, I couldn't even put a number on that, but it's going to be in the millions. There's more to this as well. Thinking of a context, basic personal hygiene is important, not just when you're handling raw meat, but just in life generally. When you go to the toilet, you wash your hands, and that way you don't pass anything on. When you're touching raw chicken, you wash your hands, and that way you don't pass anything on. And as long as you're observing, you shouldn't really have a problem. But the one that I hear most of all is that somebody's fed the dog raw meat, and they've then gone and licked a child. He's licked it, he's going to get salmonella. That's simply not true, and that's because dogs have this wonderful substance that's evolved probably before they have, called saliva. We've got it too. And it contains a certain concoction of chemicals. I won't name them all because there's a lot in there, but it's all linked to their immune system. It's actually pretty much the first line of defense in any immune system is actually in the saliva. And I'll take salmonella as the example, okay? So firstly, any bacteria needs optimal conditions to really thrive and to really do the damage and live its life, okay? And bacteria without those conditions really struggle. They're not going to do too much damage. I mean, for example, you can go into a vet's or you can go to the side of the road and you can pick up a hedgehog and you won't catch rabies, you won't catch salmonella, but you can guarantee that it's carrying it. Okay, that's because the salmonella bacteria is coming into contact with your hands. And while it's true that bacteria hasn't evolved for millions of years, that doesn't mean anything really. All it means is that, much like a shark, which also hasn't evolved for a good few million years, it's found success. It doesn't need to change. And the reason it doesn't need to change is because it hijacks in your food, which is absolutely miraculous, really, when you think about it. What a clever little thing. And that's because the properties and the conditions that it wants exist inside your gut. And your immune system can't attack salmonella if it's in your food, because for your immune system to highlight something that you're eating as being a foreign antibody is just so counter. It just doesn't work like that. So if you get salmonella on your skin, the chances are that your white blood cells are just going to turn up and absolutely eviscerate it. That's what they do. But in the case of a dog, it's even more than that, because a dog, like I was saying, it has saliva. Now, that saliva contains a number of different things. It's got antibacterial properties, first of all. Just to name, I'll name, 3 or 4 of them. It's got lysosome. That's an enzyme that attacks cell walls and literally disintegrates them, melts them down so that the cell just kind of blobs out everywhere, if you will. It contains peroxidase. That acts as a catalyst, and it helps to turn organic matter into water upon contact. So even if there is bacteria like salmonella there, once it's hit the dog's tongue, the dog's saliva is actually converting it into water. It's also got another one called defensin. I like the name of that. But that's an enzyme that envelops all of the foreign cells like a hug. So it kind of quarantines any foreign body until the white blood cells can come and deal with them. And they also contain cystatins, which inhibit cell growth. So they stop the cell dividing and multiplying, essentially. So before a dog's lick is delivered, the dog's immune system's already eviscerated any kind of bacteria that's on there. And then, of course, it's coming into contact with your immune system, which is arguably much more advanced than dogs, really. And it's already been ravaged, before it gets to you. So the chances of passing on a contamination in that way are so remote, it's untrue. I mean, I can't say it's 0% because nothing in life is 0%. That just doesn't happen. But the chances are so remote, it's untrue. What I would say is to refer back to that list of ingredients that were there earlier. I said don't pay any attention to the table at the top. Now's the time to pay attention to the table at the top, okay? Because these preservatives, the calcium propionate, and ascorbic acid, they kill and process foods a shelf life. It can be up to a year, and in some varieties it's even longer. Now the issue with that is that you'll see that 14% it was of the actual content of the kibble, which was I think a kilogram bag. I think that was. So that's quite a lot. It's nearly a fifth of the bag is moisture. Now obviously, if you're leaving that in a cupboard where it's untouched and it's kind of warm, that provides a beautiful environment for things like salmonella and other pathogens, particularly to prosper and to survive. And the fact of the matter is, there's more proven cases of salmonella infection from kibbles than there are from raw food. And I think one of the reasons for that is that when you look at particularly cattle production these days, 70% of all cattle that are raised are given antibiotics when they're growing up. They're given life. If antibiotics are good enough for us when we've got a sniffle, we surely should be given the food that we eat it if they're under the weather as well. And by boosting the cattle's immune system, you're also minimizing that risk of any foreign body, even more. There's no need for it at all. In addition,
that's together?
Diatomaceous earth, not really. I don't supplement. I've never ever supplemented because I've never needed to. And my view on supplements is that you shouldn't give them as a precautionary measure. That isn't the idea of supplements. The idea of supplements is that they provide something that is needed or is missing. I know that people use diatomaceous earth to worm as a kind of a holistic wormer. I also know that it's one of the chemicals they use in fracking. So I wouldn't like to elaborate on it because if I tried to, there I probably would end up giving some pretty bad advice. So
Very nice.
right, okay, so yeah, um, it depends what it is. Whatever food substance is going to provide different reactions, and they're going to differ from dog to dog to dog to dog. But things to look for are a breakout of hives, particularly kind of in the groin area, on the legs, on the hind legs. Itching, just excessive itching and shedding of fur. Weepy eyes and tear stains. Lethargy in the dog. It doesn't want to move, it doesn't want to walk, it just seems generally out of character. Excessive salivating, diarrhea, whining for no particular reason. All of these things that just kind of don't sum up the usual behaviour of a dog can indicate that something's wrong. They could have a dry nose all the time. They could just be licking stuff, you know. That's also a common one. They just walk up to the couch and start licking the arm, you know. It depends again what type of dog you've got, because I know bull terriers are quite prone to that kind of behaviour anyway. For that, really, it's just about knowing your dog and being able to tell when it's unhappy and when it isn't. The beauty of a raw diet, especially if you're doing a do-it-yourself raw diet, kind of as I do, rather than buying a bag of mints from a store or a wholesaler, is that you actually have control over what you're feeding. So if you do find something's wrong, you do find that all of a sudden you've got a case of canker that you can't account for, or you've got an outbreak of hives. Hives is the common one, to be honest. You can start removing the proteins that you've been feeding. So if you've just introduced beef into the diet and hives break out, we'll stop feeding beef and see if the hives clear up. And if the hives do clear up, you've probably found your culprit, you know. So yeah, I'd say for that, it's just more about knowing your dog than anything else. But there are certainly indicators, but they're not always skin deep like hives and tear stains. It could be more to do with the way the dog is acting. Another indicator is that it turns its nose up at food. It just doesn't, and not a specific food item. It just doesn't want to eat. You know, if it's still drinking but it wants the food, generally that means that, you know, it's not happy with the food. It's trying to tell you that, well, I'm not eating that made me feel like crap last time. So that's generally how I would tell. I've never really had a problem with allergies. I once owned a Rhodesian Ridgeback that I was told had a beef allergy, but it never manifested. It was never an issue. I tried her on beef, and she, you know, she was fine. She took to it perfectly, and I never had any problems at all. So,
Got another question in the chat. Something that we spoke about a little bit earlier. What are the benefits of fasting your dog? I don't think she heard. Like, it's so the reason I fast my dog for the simple reason is that because they're on a raw diet, it just gives them that one day, obviously, of clearing out everything that they've eaten as well. Being an animal, the digestive system, the way that the animal in general, not just the dog, is, wild animals don't find food every day, so it just gives them sort of just more of a chance, I guess, to just process everything. And I think, just like Paul said, but I'll let him finish it, that if he's overfeeding the dog, it gives him that one extra day to just sort of make things right in its own way, I guess.
yeah, completely. I mean, the model that I feed, as I mentioned at the start, is prey model. So that's the 80-10-10. What you're trying to do is replicate a prey item in the bowl. essentially. So if you think about a chicken, 10% of that chicken or thereabouts is going to be born. Similarly, part of that is the fact that a dog or a carnivore, and it's important there, I think, to remember that dogs aren't obligate carnivores, they're facultative carnivores. And people, that's the issue with this vegan stuff, just, sorry, going on a tangent for a second. The issue with that vegan stuff is that people hear that dogs aren't obligate carnivores, so they make the assumption that dogs must be omnivores. And that simply isn't true. They're facultative carnivores, which essentially means they're not above scavenging. They're capable of eating nearly anything. I've seen dogs eat some. I once watched a dog eat a loaf of bread still in the packet. And then 2 days later, when it went for a poo, the packet was empty. You know, but it was fine. It never really bothered the dog too much, and it just goes to show how sturdy that digestive system is. But because it can cope with it, it doesn't mean it can thrive on it. Now, the issue with the issue with that is that we find food every day in wild, as you're rightly saying. What I'm always trying to do is make it as natural as I can for the dog. And a fast day, it just gives the system a break. It gives the dog a break. So if you've been feeding something that a lot of people do feed vegetables. Not something that I feed personally, but some people do. And what vegetables will do is they'll cause a spike in the insulin in the blood sugar of the dog. And a day off is just a nice period of recovery time, because what you're putting into even yourself has knock-on effects in your biology. You know, it isn't just a case of fuel goes in and energy comes out. It commands all of the systems in your body. And so that rest time, I often find, is just nice to mimic what's happening in the wild, ensure that the dog is weak, give it for the rest of the week, and it also gives the system a little bit of time to kind of just recover and reset and make sure that when I do feed it, it's nice and empty. You know, it means that anything that's coming out of the back end of the dog is only ever going to be stuff that I put in the dog.
Oh, nice. We got in the chat. Not sure if you can. Can you actually see the stream up?
Well, yeah, kind of. I've got.
There's a Mike Heaton. I think must be a friend of yours. Way hey nudie.
What's he asking? Or is he just saying hey?
Yeah, just saying hi. Yes. We got Ellie, who said my dog is always itching and it has a dry scaled nose. Otherwise, it's in good health. I really think now a raw diet will help. Great talk show. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, it's worth a go, isn't it? I mean, obviously kibble and wet food, it's not helping there, is it?
Well, that's it. Yeah.
So you've got nothing to lose by making the switch and trying to do it. I mean, what I would say is be patient. That's the biggest thing that you can be. And as long as you're patient and as long as you take it with baby steps, don't try and run before you can walk with it. And build it up slowly. Start with kin, then after 4-6 weeks, introduce green tripe, and then every other week after that, introduce another protein. Finally, building up to your organs. Everything should work out okay.
Your mate there said you could have brushed your hair.
I hope he's got his teeth in, eh?
Nice. So guys, we're pretty much at the end of the show. For those people that had a bit of issues with the sound dropping in and out, we are recording this. It's been such a great talk show. We're recording this. We will be posting this up so people can just go back and watch it later, either on Facebook or on our YouTube channels. But look, it's been really educational. I've come away with a lot more than I thought I knew a fair bit, but coming away with a lot more now. And hopefully we're going to be able to make a bit of a difference with people as well, so they got advice on what to do, what not to do, how to approach the vets, and so on. So yeah, look, Matt, we just wanted to say a big thank you to Paul for coming on the show, taking the time. Must be about 3:30 in the morning over there now. Time for bed, I guess, and then go to work.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I mean, thanks for everybody for joining in. Really, you know, it's not much use talking if you're talking at a wall, is it? So.
All right, guys. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in, and we're going to be back on the show next next Wednesday, of course, we're going to have a special guest on the show who's going to be live in here with us. She doesn't know it yet, so if you're watching, mate, get yourself ready. Alright guys, thank you for tuning in everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks guys.